Hi, I'm Quinn and I'm autistic. Welcome to Autistic. This is the first video I've done in several weeks. A couple of months ago, my father was taken to hospital, and after several weeks of alternating between fear and hope, he passed away. Like a lot of autistic people, my family relationships are more complicated than I'd like them to be, and at no time is this more apparent than at times of grief. I don't want to be maudlin today, though. I've shed an ocean of tears in these past few weeks, but I want today's video to be a reason to be hopeful rather than mired in sorrow. My dad and I were never very close, but whilst neither of us realised it at the time, it wasn't for a lack of either of us wanting to be. For all the effort both of us made, the other couldn't see it. Yet I tried so hard to bond with him and he with me. It wasn't until the very end that we finally started to understand each other. Let me paint you a picture. My dad was born in the industrial heartland of England shortly before the Second World War. His was an uncompromising working-class upbringing of hand-me-downs, make-do and mend and self-reliance. A world where tenacity and endurance were essentials to survival. I remember borrowing a Monty Python cassette from the library when I was a kid and laughing my socks off at the Four Yorkshiremen sketch because it reminded me so much of the tales of hardship he would tell. No matter the hard knocks or setbacks anyone would describe, he'd had it harder. As soon as he was old enough, he joined the Navy, and it was probably the most joyful decision he ever made. The only times I saw my dad truly animated and happy was when he talked of his time serving Queen and country. He regaled us with tales of his foreign postings and the different cultures he experienced, the friends he'd made, and the japes, banter and schemes they shared. It was meeting my mother that changed everything for him. Their whirlwind romance saw them married within 6 weeks of meeting. And it didn't take long for my mum to tire of her new husband being posted far away from home for months at a time. To please her, he left the Navy and started a new life on Civvy Street in the southwest of England, a long way from his home in the Midlands. When I was born in 1970, both my parents were well into their 30s, pretty old to be starting a family back then. These days, nobody would think twice about it, but in those days, it raised eyebrows. Almost all my school friends had parents younger than mine, who seemed more in tune with the zeitgeist, more aware of the world I was growing up in, and more optimistic for the future than my parents ever were. My dad spent more time pining for the good old days and grumbling about the fecklessness of youth than he ever did looking forward to better days. As I grew up, unaware I was autistic, I thought it was this difference in age and attitude that put a barrier between myself and my dad. He was so much older than me compared to my friends' fathers. You see, I never was able to see eye to eye with him on anything, it seemed. I was the exact opposite of everything he expected or even knew how to deal with, and I scared him. Not because he felt threatened by me, but because he was afraid of failing me, of not being the best father he could be. Yet in the end, it was that fear that proved to be our undoing. My dad was a very practical man, good with his hands and a master of the art of adaptation and repurposing. He scoured second-hand shops, small ads and even rubbish tips for useful items to fix up and put back into service. When we ate our evening meals, the dining table, the chairs, the radio that played in the background and even the plates we ate off had all previously been discarded by someone else, but he'd seen their value, rescued them and given them new life. These days, he'd be worthy of primetime TV, or at least a successful YouTube channel for all the ingenious ideas he came up with for stretching our pennies into pounds. When my friends were riding around the park on rally choppers and grifters, or racers with dropped handlebars, my bike had solid tyres, didn't have gears, and had been rescued from the local tip. Whilst now I can appreciate the hours of work and love that went into restoring it, back then I heard only the jeers of my peers as I turned up on my grandad bike. Even when times were prosperous, he never was able to shake off the feeling of the wolf being at the door that had been drummed into him in the austerity of the post-war recovery. He never tired of telling me how harsh the world could be, how letting your guard down would always lead to disaster. Everyone was out to get you unless you got them first. It was a dog-eat-dog contest, survival of the fittest, and every challenge we faced made us stronger. These were the things I focused on back then. Whilst the parents of my peers liked edgy comedy of the day, listened to pop music that was actually in the charts, and had modern gadgets like music centres, remote-controlled televisions and microwave ovens, our home was filled with both furniture and family values from the 1950s. The encouragement and confidence I saw my schoolmates receive from their families was conspicuously absent from my life. I couldn't seem to communicate with my father, couldn't gain his approval nor retain his attention. Nothing was ever good enough. Everything had to be a contest, a rivalry or a battle of wits, yet there were never any winners. I put everything down to this generational difference. My parents were closer in age to most of my friends' grandparents, and I homed in on that as the cause of the gap between us. I was wrong. The reason my father and I weren't close is that we were just too different from one another to communicate naturally. Yet there was nobody there to point that out, let alone help us. When I came home with an autism diagnosis at the age of 13, it was the first time any of us had ever heard of it. But what it did was put a name to something I knew already. That was all I had, though. A name for it. My mind worked differently to that of my peers, and that manifested in the way I perceived the world, how I communicated, how I solved problems, and how I processed feelings. What I and my family lacked was a guiding hand to show us the way, to bridge those gaps and help us reach out and actually touch. There were no autistic people in the public eye at all back then. No advocates writing articles or making YouTube videos, and no role models in the sciences, in business, or in the arts. We were still decades away from autistic people in academia contributing theories and observations that would provide insight into the differences between autistic and non-autistic minds. No autistic triad, no monotropism, no double empathy, and barely any awareness of what autistic adulthood might look like. There was nothing to help us be the father and son we both wanted to be. We were on our own, and we couldn't find a way forward. My last couple of weeks have been spent grieving not just what I lost, but what we never had. What both of us wanted but always seemed just out of reach. To understand each other. The knowledge came too late. All that I've learned over the last few decades by sharing with other autistic people, with parents and carers, and built from our collective successes and failures, didn't make it right. It was too little, too late. Even after my teenage autism diagnosis, he found it hard to believe that my differences in perception, processing and feelings, and my passionate drive for truth and fairness were just part of who I am. Of course, I tried to tell him, even before I was diagnosed, but just didn't have any impact on his fluctuating opinions. One day, he'd say I was being deliberately difficult, lazy, uncooperative or bloody-minded just to spite him. The next, he'd tell me I was too broken to realise how much confusion and pain I caused. I'd borrow books from the library and later print out articles and send him links that were left unread, whilst my verbal attempts were dismissed as feeble excuses. Back in the 1980s, when I was diagnosed, one could excuse his opinions, because the limited information available to us just didn't support what I tried to tell him. There was no internet, and the sparse details we could get via libraries were filled to the brim with tragedy and hopelessness. His frequent disbelief in my diagnosis was as much a denial of the bleak future predicted in those papers as it was his personal desire to have a normal child. As the situation changed, though, and information became easier to find, my frustration at his unwillingness to learn only grew. But then, a little while ago, something changed. My dad started watching this channel. Many of the things I've said in these videos I had tried telling him for years, but he couldn't grasp it then. He so wanted to guide my life in a particular direction, he didn't stop to think that we might be so different, I simply couldn't follow that path. Once he started watching, he didn't stop, and before long, he'd watched them all. Then he read the comments from you guys, the viewers who've supported me and helped me grow. Then he followed me onto social media and saw how many people were saying the same as me and told stories just like mine. Something clicked, and he did the hardest thing he ever did. He apologised to me for all those mistakes made in the past. He wanted me to know that, whilst he got it wrong, he'd done it for all the right reasons. He thought the pain would make me stronger, the challenge would spur me on, and his disapproval would make me fight to prove him wrong. It took until he was in his 80s and me in my 50s for him to make sense of the fact that we were simply wired differently. It was a moment of realisation that changed both our lives. But we never got a chance to build on it, to talk it over and heal our differences. I can't fix those 50 years of mistakes, missteps and misunderstandings. But at least I know that however different we were, however far apart our views of the world, thanks to him taking the time to finally listen, he left this world knowing that his son loved him. If you're a parent of an autistic kid, don't wait to build those bonds. Don't waste your life trying to change your kids in the belief it'll make them better or happier people. Learn from them now as they're growing up. Help them embrace their differences to make the best use of them and support them through the difficulties they will have even when they're not under your roof anymore. Be prepared to be wrong, but be ready to fight their corner, even if you don't quite understand why you're fighting yet. Join them on their journey to discover who they really are, and help them jump obstacles you may never have faced in your own lives. Be a champion, not a challenger. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, then there are over 130 more videos on autistic life on the channel so far. And don't forget to leave a like, subscribe and comment to help the channel grow. There's also a Patreon link in the description if you appreciate my work enough to want to help me finance future content, and exclusive Autismatic merch to treat yourself with.